Hello and welcome to what is this week, the Chthonia Thursday live stream. I'm Breach Burke. And I had my morning coffee podcast, and now I'm doing my afternoon tea podcast, sort of, although it's not really truly afternoon tea at noon. Not at least by British definition. Yeah, this one I had to do a little bit later, and Sam, hello! Actually, it is afternoon by you. I was just saying I'm having my afternoon tea, and I'm like, it's not really time for afternoon tea, but yeah, it's so good to see you. I missed you this morning. Yeah, so sorry it wasn't Christmas shopping. Hey, it's all good. I know it's not everybody makes every single one. Just like some days I don't make it either. But very good that we'll catch up with you now. I have, today is actually a very windy day. We had snow this morning, and, not a lot. I mean, I had to go to, I got another eBay sale, so I had to go to the post office today, so that's the only time I ventured out. And it was very funny because I went to, the winds are like 55, 60 miles an hour. I mean, I'm a little concerned. I'm hoping the power doesn't go out. I'm hoping the internet doesn't go out while I'm doing this. Well, fingers crossed, basically. And but it is lovely out. I mean, in terms of the sky and everything. I mean, I'm really I kind of dig this weather. I just, as long as the power and the internet don't go out, I'm digging this weather. And hello, Kelsey. Nice to see you. I'm very much. I had an interesting day yesterday, and I did talk about this on my morning live stream. Because I had just streams of cars running down this road, and this road is actually it's basically a one-lane road. It's a two-way road, but there were just cars that I think they thought they were going to make it out to the highway, and I'm like, okay, when there's that many cars trying to get down here, I said something has happened. Like, something's happened either on the highway nearby, or it's happened in town. And so I go to the fire and EMS alerts for the area, which I have on Facebook. And when I looked at it, it was apparently a tractor trailer decided to try to go under the railroad bridge that we have on the main street, which is low. I mean, it tells you, if you're higher than this, they all do. Like, if your vehicle is above so many feet high, you can't go through here. Sure enough, this guy decides he's going to try to squeeze through anyway and gets stuck. And I don't think they actually got him out fully. I mean, the whole thing capsized and everything in the road. He was safe, I guess. But it took them till like after 8 o'clock last night to get him out. So I was trying to record a live stream for Patreon, which I'm going to talk to just a little bit about that today, at least one little tiny piece of it. And I'm trying to record it, and I think I even said on there, I'm like, where are all these cars coming from? It's really annoying because this is a 15 mile an hour road, and they come racing down here really fast because they think it's a slip road, but they think they're going to get out to the highway, and then they stop dead. Like, I'm waiting for one of them to go over the cliff, right? And then they have to turn around and go back. So, I don't know. It was a bit of an adventure yesterday, like sitting here. I'm like, why? I can't say I've never seen this much traffic, but it's always because something has happened. So, in any case, fortunately today's not a day like that. But when I went to go to the post office, the guy in the post office, I don't know if he's the postmaster there or what, but he, whenever I brought the package, all he had to do was scan it and put it there. But he had to tell me the story of this, because I guess this package is where it's going. He's like, oh, I know a guy who lives there, and he had to tell me this whole story. And I think it's really just because it's cold and windy, and he was working outside, and he did not want to go back outside. So he was probably like, oh, good, I'll just talk to a customer for 15 minutes. And I'm like, okay, but I have things to do. But, it was fine. So, in any case, it was, it's a blustery day here. And I'm sorry I had to postpone this, but I have a huge dumpster outside that I had to fill. Now, they still haven't come to pick it up. They were supposed to pick it up yesterday, and I had called and let them know that I'm done with it, but, whatever. I mean, they'll come when they're ready. But I just spent hours and hours doing that. Oh my God, yeah. It's, the whole thing is full. I mean, and it was a massive dumpster, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to have enough stuff to go into this dumpster. Well, a significant portion of my life is now in that dumpster. I mean, you wouldn't know from looking at my room, But I mean, stuff like furniture in my bed and stuff are not going to be the last thing to go. I mean, when the move is solid and established, then the rest of it goes, right? But I will be going through books next, and so there'll probably be a lot more stuff appearing on my eBay. Right now I have my Edward Gordy stuff for sale, and people are slowly starting to buy that again. But I'll probably have some of my magic books on sale and stuff too. I literally have just decimated everything. I also have swords I have to get rid of, and I don't quite know how I'm going to do that. But there's so much. Anything that I don't immediately use, I have just gotten rid of. Anything that's there, like, well, one of these days I'm going to use it, like, it's gone. And I have recycling out the wazoo, so I have to drive to the recycling center to get rid of a lot of it, because there's no way, they'll only take so much every week here in town. And I just have piles and piles of papers and old articles and stuff. I'm like, they all have to go. So yeah, I have been diligently clearing out in preparation for moving at some point next year. Hopefully within the first half of the year. I will have to update people when I know more about that. So in addition to that, Chthonia books are still on sale, just to give little updates. I'm still selling them $5 for the book plus $5 shipping USA. Outside of USA, people would have to DM me, but they're actually, as much as I hate Amazon, you're probably actually better off ordering it through Amazon, because you will get it faster, and it doesn't have to go through, customs and all that rigmarole, and it would cost a lot more money. Canada, apparently, I can't ship anything to right now because they have a postal strike going on, to or from. So we're kind of in a, it's just interesting kind of situation. But the books have been selling, but there are some copies left of everything. So I'm trying to do the plugs for that. And what else is going on with Chthonia? ISFM, right. All the teachers from last term have recommitted to teaching next term. And plus Susie Groff, who is she's a filmmaker, and I know she's also, she's been at NYU. I know she's taught at different universities and so forth. She's just finished a book on, that I'm currently in editorial with her on the Earth Mother. It's an interesting kind of sci-fi speculative kind of a thing. But she is going to teach a workshop on writing and working with feminine archetypes in writing, or feminine myths in writing, trying to do something she had developed for another course. And she says, "Oh, I could do this for your course." So she's going to probably do that as well. But we just need to figure out where that's gonna, how the curriculum's gonna go for next term. And I haven't been rushing into that because we're probably not going to be starting until maybe late February towards March. Because remember, it's usually only an 8-week session, so it would probably be March to May or something like that. And hello, Gary, good to see you. So we will see where all of that ends up. The little ISFM end of term party is going to be on the 15th for ISFM students, those who were auditors, Patreon subscribers, and who else? And basically people who have taken my classes on my other channel, Transition Life Coaching, as well. And hello, Sophie, welcome. So we're going to be going to have a little get together for those people, and they've all been notified about that. So if people can join, they have the link for that. And I'm just finishing up some classes that I'm teaching this coming weekend up in Milford, where I teach courses at the Wellness Center there. So that'll be finished up because I really don't like to do a whole lot of in-person teaching in the wintertime, just because of weather and so forth. So that's the update with Chthonia. I am working on another piece of writing now. I've been kind of prompted to work on something else. I always feel like I have different strands of things going on, and I do have some finished pieces, but I just right now I'm just not in final editorial mode to kind of get those published. I'm kind of putting that on hold for the time being, and I did release quite a few books last year for Chthonia Books. I mean, given the size of the publication, the publishing firm, I think we released about three books last year? And that's the first number that I've released since, I was hoping to release about 5 this year, but there's been just a lot of stuff that has been, I don't want to say in the way exactly, but it's just been, I've just been very busy and overwhelmed, and as I get older, I have developed certain health issues that when they strike, it's like, okay, no matter what I intended to do that day, I'm not doing it, and usually they revolve around really, really brutal headaches. And again, all of these are, connected to probably change of life and stuff like that, so it's just not, it is what it is. And whenever I say it, I always get like 20 million emails, people being like, oh, if you have a headache, this is what you can do for it. And all of that's, of course, very well intentioned. But the reality is, I said, yeah, I've been going through this for a long time, and I have tried every last one of those things, and none of them works. So when I have a headache, the only answer is, put ice on the side of my head and wait till it goes away. So, so that periodically is what I end up dealing with. But, I'm struggling with my middle-aged body and, and everything that I want to do. All right, so that's the Chthonia updates out of the way. That's everything that's new. And I do post these kind of updates a little more earlier and more frequently to Patreon. So if anybody's not a member and wants to join over there, I do, that is early podcast access. Certainly anybody at the $5 level and above gets extra podcasts and things like that as well. And also there are benefits in terms that people can take or at least audit classes in the ISFM for free. So, so let me get on to what the topic was that I had mentioned today when I posted about this. Now, the topic that I was thinking about for today had to do with the mother complex. And I actually made a note earlier this week about it. It was something that had come up. And the origin of this topic came from an Instagram feed that I was looking at, that I follow now, called Philemon is Alive. Now, Philemon is like Baucis and Philemon, if you know the myth. If not, Philemon is spelled Philemon, is alive, one word. And it is a channel of, it's basically somebody else who is looking at not only Jungian archetypes, but also about the balancing of masculine and feminine. Now, Philemon, of course, is the term that Jung used in his Red Book and so forth in reference to his own soul. And that's the name of the channel. And I do post those to my stories, usually on my other channel, quite regularly, because he does talk a lot about the anima. He talks about father archetypes. He talks about the reasons that men and women run into certain emotional impasses, in what archetypally has been underdeveloped or has just been repressed or undeveloped entirely, that can cause those kinds of conflicts, and what that make at least when we're talking about masculine feminine relationships, that can make them difficult and challenging. Especially when you're dealing with, he was talking recently. I think it's a guy who runs this channel. I could be wrong, but but he had said something about the way in which when certain aspects of the feminine are not developed in the man, that the man can therefore that's when, like if they're in a marriage and let's just say the woman starts to cry, where he might just either get really angry and frustrated with her, or where he might just walk away entirely and be like, I'm not going to deal with this. And that's a common thing that happens, actually. That happens more often than you would think. And it's because men just, it's part of this underdeveloped feminine, or not using the anima in the right way, not recognizing the anima as a kind of projection figure. And understanding this. I think it was Robert Johnson, who's another Jungian analyst, who had said that a man's misuse of his anima is probably the cause of the most sorrow in relationships that you will ever see, and it's sorrow on both parts, because the man doesn't know what to do with his feelings and the woman is not being heard. So it becomes this kind of impasse. But he had done a little thing, and of course I will recommend obviously his Instagram channel and say, check him out and give him a follow if this is the kind of thing that you like. And I think he also does he has like audio recordings and PDFs and stuff too. So just a little plug for that channel. I mean, I don't know him, but I know that if I'm using material from there, I definitely would like people to check it out. So Okay, so what he wrote about was the mother complex. Now, if you follow these live streams regularly, you'll know that I've talked about the mother complex before. And I've talked about it mainly with respect to women and how the mother-daughter relationship, how that transforms and how that affects us as we get older, if there is indeed a complex. Okay. Now, again, with any kind of complex, and he says this as well, is that a complex is never about an individual. Complexes are projected onto individuals. So if we're talking about a mother complex, we're not talking about like your mom, okay? Or we're not talking about, whoever fills that role. We're talking about, or any woman really. But the way that archetype, the extent to which it is a complex in you can get projected onto another person. So the other person really isn't the source of your complex. It's you, right? Like anything. But he talks about the mythological hero slaying a dragon. Okay, so this is where he had started with this this thing. And I do believe I posted this to my stories. If I didn't, over on the other channel, it is there. But he starts with talking about a hero facing a dragon. And he said that particular mythological motif actually has to do with the mother complex itself. The dragon that is being battled, according to Jungian theory, is the mother complex. Now, what is the mother complex? Well, it's a kind of regressive pull. It's something that threatens to pull you back into what Erich Neumann would call the great round, into the container that we think of with the archetypal mother feminine. With that space out of which things are created, and when things are eventually lose their identity at the point of death, get resubsumed. From dust you came, and to dust you shall return. It's that kind of an idea. And so it's talking about mother in these very much more abstract archetypal terms, as archetypal terms typically are. They're not something we recognize until we actually see it. But okay, I quoted a little bit from what he said. So let me just mention a few bits from his from this feed. It says, when heroes facing a dragon, there's a regressive pull, and it's characterized by, among other things, the desire to give up when things get tough, to regress, to pull back. And he says it's characterized by mood swings, discouragement, paralysis, and feeling fed up with life. And to succumb to it is to lose the battle of life itself. And I believe Jung is being quoted here. And it's always internal. It's not about real women. But it's the part of us that wants to be taken care of. Okay, it's funny, on our other channel, people make references to like hiding in their blanket fort or whatever. We all have things that are like that. This idea of, I don't want to deal with life's responsibilities. And the question that I fundamentally ask when I think about this complex is, and this is going to sound like a weird question, and people's automatic response would be like, well, yeah, of course, but I'm saying, is it always a bad thing? Okay. Now, and you might argue, okay, that a complex is something that's more on the level of a psychosis, in which case this is something that really impairs a person's ability to function as a person. Okay, and of course, in those cases, yes. I mean, when anything gets to that level, anything gets to that extreme, then it's a problem, because it's blocking you from living your life the way that you want, or the way that you are going to it prevents you from sharing your gifts, sharing your interests, sharing your voice with the world. If you feel the question becomes, why is there a need to withdraw again? Now, some very serious aspects of the mother complex in the way of thinking about this, you could even you could argue that things like depression, and even depression where one thinks about taking their life, could also even be potentially sort of an extreme version of that complex, because there's this idea of desire to return to the womb, to not face life, to walk away from it. And in that case, it can be a very, very negative thing. Now, this relates to the special podcast I did for Patreon, because I was talking about the Odyssey and the feminine, which the Odyssey is it's an Odyssey of the feminine, dark feminine and otherwise. I mean, Odyssey is completely, and really I could only scratch the surface of it in the podcast that I did. But there's one particular episode that I don't really go into in the podcast, and that is of the Lotus Eaters. Okay. Now, the Lotus Eaters is, now when Odysseus, for those of you, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with the Odyssey, but if you're not, obviously, Odysseus is returning from the Trojan War, or Ulysses as he's known in the Roman, and as and he runs into these mishaps trying to get home. So he and his men are trying to get home, and they stop from island to island. If you've ever read the Argonautica, you'll find some similarities in that journey. But they stop in these different places, and he manages to tick Poseidon off by blinding Polyphemus, the Cyclops, who is the son of Poseidon. And so they have a lot of trouble on their journey. But one of the places they stop is called the Island of the Lotus Eaters. Now, in this island, the people there are, it's not an unfriendly place. It's actually quite beautiful. But if you partake of any of the, they actually eat any of these kind of flowers that are there, they immediately kind of forget what their life is about and decide that they don't want to go forward anymore. That they just want to stay there. It's almost like the people who take psychedelic drugs and then be like, yeah, I'm just going to drop out and I'm just going to, stay in this place and never deal with adult life, right? Or never deal with whatever the quest or the journey or whatever it is. And that desire to remain passive, okay, that's almost like an imbalance of yin energy. It's like it's the idea that we want to be passive to the point that we don't want to do anything. We want action can be taken by other people, but not by us, right? So the Lotus Eaters, I think, is kind of an embodiment of that aspect of the feminine, in the sense that it is that mother complex, that complex that says, you know what, you can just stay here in this beautiful place and not do anything. Okay, so a few things to think about there. Now, for some reason, I mean, there's different manifestations of this when we think of people who are functioning within the context of Christian religion, especially people who are more evangelical, I would say. I don't know that we necessarily see this kind of thing, or that I necessarily experience this kind of thing in Catholicism per se. But I think that one example I can think of, I had somebody I worked with we did somebody in this one, actually, it's funny, there's been a couple libraries I've worked with where I've worked with JWs, Jehovah's Witnesses. And for the most, basically they don't, it was fine. I mean, they didn't bother anybody with their, they weren't trying to proselytize to anybody. But in the one library where I worked in the break room, there was this book, this JW book called You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth. And I remember picking up this book. I was kind of amused by it. And as I was looking through it, I mean, literally, it's just showing all these people and in this perfect place. If none of us sin, everything would be perfect all the time and everywhere, And I'm thinking, God, that would be bleeding awful, wouldn't it? I mean, think about it. If you just lived, and first of all, that seems like it's an entirely subjective thing. What does it mean to be in paradise all the time? What does that mean? What does that look like? To be in a place, I always talk about the Adam and Eve myth, and I say, okay, the Garden of Eden, let's just say that that's our standard, our ideal, right? There's a reason that there was the disobedience and the ejection from the garden. That everything about, that was the first sin, and see, we never would have experienced anything, we never experienced death, we never experienced all these terrible things if if Adam and Eve had just obeyed. And I'm like, yeah, but if they just obeyed, there would be no life. Wounding is part of life. Death is part of life. And there's frequent arguments about whether or not that's a good thing. And I always say to people, it's like, okay, think about the prospect of living forever. And there are people who contemplate this. I mean, you see these billionaires who are trying to, dedicate money to trying to figure out how somebody can be immortal or live, over hundreds of years, and I personally have no clue why anybody would want to do that. To me, it's like you live your lifespan. At some point, the body wears out. Why do you want to spend so much time maintaining the body? And God knows it just, things get worse every year. Why would you want to live beyond whatever your normal lifespan is? Like, why the heck would I want to live for 1,000 years? That's not even going to be a world that resembles the one that I live in. And people are already, complaining because, things are not like the way they used to be. Well, and you want to live forever? Like, what's that all about, right? Isn't that what the Highlander series was about? To some degree. Why do you want to live forever? Secondly, okay, if you're living in a space, what does it mean to live in paradise? Okay, what is this paradisial place that is really, as they're saying, is kind of more of a projection about the archetypal womb, okay, that where somebody can hide and be safe, in their little cocoon, away from things. Well, the idea is then, if you think about the mother as nurturer, as the one who is going to provide, then it's almost like all of your wants are gratified, right? So what happens when all your wants are gratified? Are you really satisfied? And and that's just, and I remember a story that was told somewhere. It was probably a homily somewhere at church, but, and most of them that I think this priest told were, but in any case, but there was kind of a point to this one where they were talking about somebody who died and went to a place that was like really beautiful. And as soon as they went in, it's like everything they wanted was immediately handed to them. Everything that they wanted just automatically came to them. And they thought, this is just great. I've arrived in heaven. This is wonderful. But as time went on, they just began to find that, as soon as they thought of something, they got what they wanted. And then they finally said to somebody there, they're like, well, no, I don't want this. And they're like, oh, no, but you're always going to get everything that you want. And they said, well, then I'd rather go to hell. And they said, well, where do you think you are? That was kind of the thing of that was the moral of the tale. Where do you think you are? You really don't want to get everything all the time. There's a certain amount of, the life experience we have shapes who we are. And as much as we talk about trauma and we talk about bad experiences and how they affect us, we don't think about, a lot of the times, what life would be like if we never had any of those experiences. Now, people's experiences vary. And I know, I've worked with people, I have friends who have had some really, really horrific life experiences. And yes, obviously, some of these are not experiences you would want to wish on anybody, okay? So I'm not sugarcoating or whitewashing people's experiences or saying like, oh, but there's a good side to it. Like, no, for them, it was painful. But that pain, we act like that pain is something, it's like Schopenhauer, life is something that never should have been. It kind of gets back almost to, and I find myself thinking of Campbell talking about how the horror of the world is a foreground to a wonder. Okay, when you live in the world, you participate in it, good, bad, and ugly. Okay, we participate in it. I mean, that's just the factual reality in spite of how we feel about it or how it affects us individually. All of these things kind of help us move and grow. So strictly speaking, yeah, I think really what I'm really more saying fundamentally is if you took all those experiences away and said, okay, none of that's ever going to happen to you. It's only going to be the good stuff and none of the bad stuff's ever going to happen. It'd be worth contemplating what a life like that would be like, okay? And whether or not you would even know you were having good experiences if you didn't have the so-called bad, well, I'm not going to say so-called, the bad ones. For some of them, yeah, they can almost be maybe objectively bad. But, okay, so having said that, we understand that participating in life is a thing that we all do. We're all here to participate in life. You don't want to drop out of life. That said, then there's the other side of the coin, I suppose, or the other side of the issue. And we do live in a society where we are expected to be productive. Productivity is that's the thing. How many times have you had a day where it's like a lazy day, right? Where you can, and think of the word we're using here, lazy, right? You have a day, you have a 2-week holiday or something, or you have, you're going to go away someplace. You're going to go to the beach. You're going to go somewhere, go hiking in the forest. Whatever it is, you're going to go away and spend time not working, not being productive. Even when we take time away to not be productive, we feel like we have to be productive. How many times do you see people on their phones or their laptops and they're on the freaking beach? It's like, put it away. You're not working, you know? Or if you go on vacation, there has to be an objective. The objective is to see these, 5 places or to do this thing. There's no such thing as saying, I'm just going to take time out. I'm just going to take 2 weeks off and go to bed and recharge. Or just sit in my house and do anything that it's of no consequence to anybody, right? Because even when we have time to ourselves, we have to achieve something, right? If I go abroad, it's like, well, where did you go visit? The idea that I might have just hung out in a pub and perused a novel I wanted to read or just did some people watch. It's almost like, well, what's the point of that? Well, because it's what I want to do, we always feel that we have to be doing something. And if we, and we kind of have disdain for people who just feel like, okay, I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna sit and, get up at noon and kind of putter around in my pajamas all day or whatever. Like that, we look at that like that's a problem. Now, it's recognized that people who can never get out of that loop, which is kind of what we're talking about here, maybe people who are suffering from depression because they have no motivation to do anything. But on the other extreme, a lot of times we feel we have to take on too much. We have to do more than, like the person who's working hard all the time is the good person, right? Or we have admiration for that person. Wow, look at that person. Look at how much energy they have. Look at all the things that they can do. And the thing is, okay, we have to ask ourselves, is that a good thing also? Now, if you're a very energetic person and you have a lot of interests, there's nothing wrong with saying, oh, okay, I'm gonna do these things. But, why? But we always seem to feel that everything has to be purpose-driven. And oftentimes the purpose we have to be driven towards is financial. What are you doing? If you're spending time on something that doesn't make money, then are you wasting time? And that's where the value has tended to be in this society. The idea that you might just feel like making a piece of art for its own sake, or writing a story just for its own sake, or writing poetry, or writing, people act like, oh, that's just, or even just meditating. We use the very disparaging term, navel gazing, right? You just have time, or people will say, oh, well, you seem, you lazy over there, you have time to do all this stuff. And yet, in the same breath, we talk about things like work-life balance, right? So my point is just, when we talk about a mother complex, obviously we can be talking about a state where somebody's just not motivated to do anything, okay? But are we also treating people in situations where somebody says, no, you know what, I'm just not motivated to do anything right now, and I need a break from doing 50 million things. And then we tend to feel guilty about taking a break because we think there's something wrong with us, that we are immature, irresponsible, not doing things. And are you? Do these things happen? There have been some discussions of depression, and I know I've talked about this before. Now, obviously, deep clinical depression is a problem, right? That needs to be dealt with and addressed. But sometimes, we can fall into depressions that are not quite so deep and so serious, and we may want to pull away from people. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that is almost like a psychological reset that's going on. Like, hey, stop all the doing and spend the time just being. or just processing your emotions or whatever. Like you don't need to have a plan and a purpose and a financial goal. It doesn't always have to be that. And that's a very, very hard thing for us. The idea that somehow it's like time is something that is because death is a thing. We're always on the clock, and if you're always on the clock, then you're not going to. Then somehow you're either going to miss something. It's that fear of missing out, right? Oh, I could have participated in this cool thing and I didn't do it, or we feel like somehow we are, being seen as shiftless, lazy, irresponsible, and not productive. Now, one of the good examples of this that I think I kind of have in mind is when we talk about people who are, say, Gen Z, who want to be influencers. Like they're in school and people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be an influencer. And people roll their eyes and they're like, oh yeah, you just want to walk around, take pictures all day, and you want just people to like your thing, and what a stupid thing that is. But at the same time, if people, but let's face it, if people did get enough likes and do enough things, they might be in a position where they're making ad revenue or they're making certain things. I mean, as far as if your goal is to make money, then that's a thing. You can do that. But yeah. So to me, I don't know. I mean, to me, is it just that is it part of the, well, I broke my back doing this, so you should do that too. I'm always thinking of what Alan Watts had said about, why should you get in a boat and get oars and start rowing when you can set the sails a certain way and just let it take you to where you're going? That's almost like a very Taoist thing. Why do we always have to impose a plan and a control and everything on things because that's the way we should do it as responsible adults. We should step up and answer the call of leadership and set our 5-year plan or whatever. And to not do that is considered to be somehow, you're just living in a delusion. You're not responsible. You're not. And okay, so I think where I'm kind of going with this is that when we talk about a complex, okay, a mother complex, somebody who says, you know what, I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this. Okay, are we talking about somebody who literally just, because there are these people out there who will say like, yeah, I just want to live in mom's basement forever and I never want to do anything. I mean, that's one thing. But if it's just, I don't want to play the game the way it's being played, I see that sometimes being interpreted as a very similar thing. And I'm like, well, is this more of the negative way of thinking about yin energy, about thinking about the feminine? Anything that involves us just being without any kind of purpose, without any kind of plan, that somehow there's something wrong with you if you're doing that. That can't be the way it is, or that's a sign that you're depressed. Are you depressed? Or are you irresponsible? Or do you just think a plan may not be necessary? Now, I think if we're in a space where we're trying to think differently about the future, okay, we are moving into a space where one of the big topics is AI, right? What's AI going to do with everything? AI is cannibalizing everybody's creative work, right? And we have this thing, you can't turn anywhere without it. I have literally not updated my phone and not updated my computer. At some point I'm going to have to, because I don't need all this crap weighing my computer down, eating resources so that now everything goes in slow motion because I can't do anything, right? And, but all of it's AI. When I created my new websites, it's like, AI will build it for you. I'm like, AI can go fuck off. I don't want AI building anything for me, okay? Where do I find AI useful? Well, I mean, occasionally, like if I'm trying to brainstorm something and I just want to get something, go into ChatGPT, hey, give me a name for this. And I usually don't even take the name that they give me, but sometimes it gets me thinking in the right direction. Like, okay, yeah, AI might be able to be a jumping off point. That's about as far as it goes for me. But there are people who write entire books with AI. And by the way, somebody had posted the other day on that they had gone to ChatGPT looking for books, and it had to do with a particular topic in Eastern religion or meditation. And they said ChatGPT recommended 7 books, and they said 6 of them didn't exist. It just made them up. We were talking on my other live stream the other day about they're using AI for hospital transcription, and it's literally writing things into patients' reports that are not true and didn't happen. And I think, actually, Sam, I think you were still on here. You were telling me about somebody who they basically gave a woman cancer treatment because AI had put in her chart that she had cancer, and she in fact did not. We're putting a lot of trust in something. First of all, AI cannibalized stuff. I mean, it can be kind of interesting. Sometimes you look at it and you think, oh, well, yeah, I threw these prompts in and this is what it came up with. Well, that's weird. But, or we just laugh at how people end up with 6 fingers or an extra ear or something. It's still not great. But they're firing entire art departments. Music is being cannibalized by AI. There are AI bands now. Okay, they're entirely AI and AI driven, and a lot of there's a lot of art being generated from that. And when you belong to any platform like this one, including what I'm telling you now, basically Meta can take all of that and say, okay, we're going to throw it into the AI grinder, and it's going to come out. It can potentially come out with something out of learning from what you are saying, and. So okay, let's suppose that AI takes over everything. Let's just say that all of that kind of stuff, all human creativity now is just, AI is just, in this constant, almost Ouroboros cycle of eating itself, right? All it's doing is eating itself. And because it has to, its data has to go in order for something to come out. So let's just say that this is what it's doing. Artificial intelligence is replacing everything that deals with human interaction. And it's like, okay, and there's a world where, look at all the stuff you don't now have to do. And, and again, there's certain jobs where I feel like, yeah, that makes sense. Certain mindless or repetitive tasks that somebody has to sit and do there all day. If you can. That's been the way with technology from time immemorial. You want to use that to, that would be a good use of, automating those things that you don't have to spend your time on, but ideally so that you can focus on what it means to be a person, what it means to be a creative person, without the burden of, I have to produce so much of this in order to make something. I know you can hear the wind there. I hope I don't lose you guys because, it's quite windy here today, and I hope the internet doesn't go out. Okay, so I don't want to go off on too wild of a tangent with AI here. But the point is, what's the point of it? Okay, first of all, it's largely for corporations to do things for far less cost, so they can rake in more profit on something without actually employing people, or with employing them once and then, taking something from them and then that's it. We don't need you now. So I feel like, where are we moving towards a world where there's really no motivation for us to do anything? I think that's where I'm going with this, where there's no motivation for us to do anything. And is that, again, people are really questioning this and saying, is this a world that we want to live in? So, and what is, when it comes to living our life and spending time, okay, because the other piece of it is that when we have things that are supposed to make our lives easier, right? Technology and so forth, it's going to make our lives easier. This, like I said, I've talked about this before. That goes back to the 50s when people, the first time women had dishwashers and vacuum cleaners and stuff. And it's like, oh, look, now she's got all this great technology in her kitchen. Now she can spend half the afternoon playing tennis. I mean, which never happened. Basically, once all of that mundane stuff is taken over by automation, then we just find more stuff to do, right? Because we always feel like we have to be doing something. We have to be productive. There has to be a meaning to something all the time. And so I don't know. I mean, I feel like we still, in spite of this, whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's really that meaningful or not, we are constantly driven to be doing something. And so what would it be like if we just said, okay, we're not going to do anything except, you're going to step back from all of that, and the only things that we're going to be doing are things that kind of feel meaningful to the soul. Whatever that means to people. And for people who say, I don't really know how to connect with that, there is also, to be thought of the kind of meditations that one has in doing just the most mundane tasks. Sometimes there is something in just the simplicity of doing certain things. Like I remember when I was, before I became a librarian and I had library jobs where I would work, you worked the circulation desk and stuff like that. Like you had a routine. You came in early and you brought the book drop in. You checked everything in. You got everything set up. There were just certain tasks that you always did. And I always felt like those tasks were almost like a meditation. It was just like they were just a repetitive thing. If you think about monks in a monastery who have their chores, right, that they do. All of these things are, I don't know, they're all part of what we need to do to live. But I feel to a certain degree there's also a certain aspect of these things that also balance the psyche out. We always feel like we have to be doing something. If we're paralyzed, I don't tend to think of that paralyzing as a mother complex so much as I would as what Heinrich Fierce would have called a Medusa effect, where usually there's some kind of a trauma or shock, and a person says, "Okay, I'm just not doing anything now." Okay, the difference between that and a mother complex, I would think, is that a mother complex is literally just somebody who, for whatever reason, just expects to be waited on hand and foot for the rest of their life and not having to do anything to contribute. Okay, I would think at its worst. But I don't know. I'm finding, I'm just, when I listen to these definitions of it, when I say, when I think about mood swings, okay, let's go back to the original definition. Mood swings, discouragement, paralysis, feeling fed up with life, that's part of the mother complex. I'm like, well, these are all things that at certain stages I think we should feel. Maybe, that's what I'm, just as I'm kind of working my way through this. At some point, we are all going to have, if we have experiences, this is kind of where we're going to go with it. Mood swings are a normal part of emotional cycles. I can speak for women certainly on that point. I'm sure men go through maybe some degree of it as well. Although again, with men, there's also the thing that that emotions are not, other than emotions of anger, really, that certain very deep emotions are not really meant to be expressed, or it's not, even if men have them, it's like they're not really taught what to do with them. Like, that emotion stuff's for women and certain groups, right? That's not for us. And and control of the emotions is something that we always feel is something that is so very paramount. We have to always have our emotions under control. But again, this is a very masculine way of thinking. And so I guess my whole thing would be, if you are out there doing the rat race, working, at some point, I feel it's an entirely appropriate response to say, I'm fed up with this. We can get fed up because we are spending our time and energy doing something that is, it's not, that's killing our soul, basically. That's where you have to, that's where I think I'm trying to look at this kind of wavy line here. Like where, at what point, yes, obviously we all have certain gifts and we all want to offer them. And somebody who feels totally inhibited from doing that and feels like they have to hide from life, that's a particular kind of issue and a particular kind of problem. However, the person who just sometimes feels like, if they're a very productive person, suddenly feels like, I don't want to do anything now. I don't feel like I can do anything now. I'm not entirely sure that I think that that's a problem. I think it's a state we go through. If it becomes the mode that they can't get out of ever, then it's a problem. But that's true with just about anything. I would say it's also a problem for people who feel that they can never stop working and never stop focusing on their plans and never, because then, you're the person who gets to a certain age, and once you've arrived and achieved everything, well, then what? You've basically wasted your whole life trying to, I don't know, to produce or to achieve or to get to the next thing. And, we can keep trying to get to the next thing all the time, but eventually you realize that that's futile. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of philosophies of non-attachment, right? Is that when you are too attached to the next goal, you never really stop along the way to actually live. We have times when, a lot of things are happening and we have to respond to that. And then we have times when we need to slow the fuck down. We need to back off from everything and maybe just take some time out to do nothing. It's that kind of thing is not valued. It's considered to be a luxury, just like a lot of things. Just like art is considered to be a luxury, or anything creative. It's like, yeah, well, unless you're doing it for some financial purpose, it's a luxury. Why is feeding your soul a luxury? Okay? And while I understand the complex in its starkest terms, I have to question, when I look at that, is succumbing to saying, I feel discouraged right now and I just want to go hide for a little while. Is that succumbing to the mother complex? Now you might, again, people may say, well, it depends on the duration and so on and so forth. But I tend to think that we have these things and we have these kinds of emotions, and we have times when the body just, and the mind or whatever, just does not want to cooperate with the intention, with the agenda. Doesn't want to cooperate with it because it's kind of like, no, that's not what I need right now. It's like forcing yourself to eat certain things that make you sick because, well, somebody told you that's good for you. We're not in the habit of listening to the body. And I can tell you from personal experience that when I quit my job, I am sure there are people who thought I was going through a midlife crisis, right? They're like, oh, what's wrong with her that she's, she makes does this good job, makes X number of dollars per year or whatever. And now she's just going to give all of that up to just do this kind of work, which by no means does this kind of work pay the kind of money that my other work paid. But the other work was killing me. And eventually it reached a point where I could not drive. And I've talked about this endlessly, so people who've heard it are probably like, yeah, we heard about that before. But it reached a point where, but think about it, you got to go to a 9 to 5 or 7 to 3 or whatever kind of job you have every day. You're required to drive to work every day. What do you do when you can't? What am I supposed to do? And when you go to the doctors and, they say, well, it's this and take this medication and do this and that. And those medications do nothing. They do nothing. It's like and then I said to myself, you're ignoring the body. The body is telling you it's had enough. It's had enough. And you are not 20 anymore. Yes, we are told that the noble thing to do is to say, no, well, we just gotta push on and be determined. And like, those are the things that we value. That shows strength, the fact that we're going to conquer the body. We're going to overcome and, just push on in the name of productivity and whatever. Being a good citizen and making the certain salary or whatever. And I just feel like we're moving into a space, certainly since COVID, when people have realized, like, hey, my work, I mean, okay, I can be on my computer doing my work at home, but, like, hey, there's a whole world. Like, ooh, I could sit down and talk with my family. I could go for a run in the morning. I could, like, sit and enjoy my breakfast and not, like, suck it down and run out the door or eat it in the car on the way. Like, my life doesn't have to revolve around all of this busyness. Doesn't have to do that. And so when I think about this as a Western complex, when I think about the mother complex as a Western problem, now we also, Jung also talks about like a father complexes and father issues and how those play in as well. But since we talk about the feminine on this podcast and on this, we're always in a hurry to do stuff, and if somebody's not like doing something right now, it's just kind of like, well, come on, what are you waiting for? Why are you not doing things? Why are you not ambitious? Right? A lack of ambition is seen as a problem, but does it have to be? Is ambition always the best way to go? I mean, ambition can lead to ruthlessness too. It can lead to stepping on other people. It can lead to, pushing and jockeying your way to the front. And for what? I mean, it's, in order to have plenty of money, okay? Plenty of money to what? Then not be able to live your life because you're just spending all your time pushing to get more money? So, I don't know. I'm thinking about this. I have a note here, too, to myself. I was thinking about Erik Erikson's Young Man Luther, and he talks in there about the idea of the moratorium. And he talks about it with respect to Luther and other figures as well. But the moratorium is like when you have the young person who has finished high school or whatever, and obviously nowadays it's absolutely expected that you're going to go on to college, university, whatever, that you have to have that 4-year degree of some type to be able to get a job in the world. Now, not everybody's meant for that 4-year degree. That was never the purpose of college. And it's really kind of a well-intended liberal ideal that education should be open to everybody. Now, to say that education should be open to everybody is different from saying that everybody should get a college education. And I know that sounds odd coming from somebody whose bread and butter largely comes from teaching university courses, but I look at a lot of these students, and some of them I'm like, these people have other things to do. Like they shouldn't have to be here right now. This may not be who they are or what they want to do. They may not want to sit here. I think about somebody like my dad, who graduated high school, went into the Air Force, became an airplane mechanic, which is what he wanted to do. And then when he left, since there weren't jobs in that, I think he ended up working for the phone company for like 40-something years. But he wanted to do stuff with his hands, he didn't want to read, like, the idea that he read the newspaper, but the idea that he would sit down and read a book, he's like, why? I always think about, could I picture my dad, like, in one of my classes? I mean, he just probably sit back there with his pipe going, oh, that's nice. He doesn't care. It's not his thing. Was not interested. But that's not who he was. And not everybody, while I understand the benefits of such an education, it's not for everybody. And I don't know. We have these values around what people should and shouldn't be doing. What represents somebody who is a good participating member of society and what doesn't. And when I think about the concept of the moratorium, that's like that period, that break that you get. It's that period of time where you do something else. We think about it as like the gap year or something like that, where somebody's like, you know what, I'm going to go backpacking through Europe, or I'm going to do something else. I'm not going to go to school right away. Or they might get their first job, or they might, but whatever it is, people go through periods of time where they should be able to have that break, to be able to absorb and to integrate their experience, because otherwise you live your whole life unconsciously as well. If everything is just driven towards quote unquote adult responsibilities, and yes, we all have them and we have to address them. And I understand the problems of not addressing them. But our whole life shouldn't just be a grind, I guess is what my point is. This isn't, why does everything have to be a grind? Why is that the value? Why are you a good person if you are breaking your back? I come from, my mother's side of the family is Eastern European, and that just seems, other people I know only seem to say that that's kind of a thing. Like, I went up and picked every, I picked up every leaf in the yard and now my back is killing me, and like, what a great person I am for doing that, and we kind of go, well, okay. That's kind of my mother's way of thinking. And and then the idea that you would not do everything the hard way somehow makes you like lazy and shiftless. I don't know. I think I'm playing around with these ideas and these values because, first of all, it's like what do we value as a society? And as we're moving forward into an age where AI can either help, but it's like anything. AI by itself is neutral. How we use it is where the difficulty comes in. If we're using it to replace humans, to replace human creativity, then we're doing it wrong. I'm just going to say it flat out. We're doing it wrong. That's not there's so much that it could be used for that could benefit people. But it's being used instead to replace human interaction, to replace human emotion, to replace human writing and art. And corporations are jumping on it because they feel that it's cheaper. It's cheaper than dealing with real people. And because ultimately that's what I've always said. They're not really about taking care about you. They're about the bottom line. And when life is entirely about the bottom line, then how do you refigure life in a way that you say, no, you know what? It's not all about the bottom line. I should be able to take long breaks when I want to in life. If I decide that I need a period of time where working is not a thing for me, we don't have a structure or a system that really allows for that. Our bodies get tired. We think ourselves in corners all the time to the point that we're absolutely exhausted. I mean, our thoughts alone can make us exhausted. And, thinking doesn't make humans the top of the food chain. Thinking just drives us crazy because we just think and analyze and pick apart until every experience that we have, everything that we could just live in without having to evaluate has to be evaluated. And when we live in a world where everything has to be evaluated and assessed, it's like it's exhausting. Like it would be good to just walk away from that and say, no, why do I have to do that? Why is that the way I have to live? It doesn't feed the soul. And you need to consider to what degree the society that we're in, especially now that I feel like we're in a time when we're evaluating, okay, how do things need to change? If the feminine is going to be an influence in society, right, then this is the thing we have to think about. To what degree is standing back and not playing this game of, who's going to die with the most toys or the most money, all this kind of stuff. How, that kind of the human interaction is kind of a by the by. And, everything is artificial and nobody's real. Everything has to be perfect, too. That's a whole nother subject. At what point do we reach a point where we say, no, you know what? We should all just kind of be allowed to get on in the way that maintains our body and our soul, whatever that means for us. And that we're not a bad person if we are somebody who wants to slow down or needs to slow down. There's like an acknowledgement now that as you get older that you don't slow down. It's like, oh no, you've given up, right? What's the definition of giving up here? So where does that fit in? So anyway, these are just some thoughts I had on the idea when I look at the definition of the mother complex. And again, if you talk to therapists, they will say, well, no, there is technically a specific therapeutic definition of that. But nonetheless, it does make me think about, it gets back to the idea of how we tend to value certain masculine qualities over feminine ones. Okay, and we tend to treat some of those feminine qualities as a problem. So that's the thing I was kind of meditating on before. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me. We're at 5 after, so I'm going to probably call this to a close. And I'm going to probably, after a week of doing all the crap I was talking about, I have a friend to call, but I'm hoping to have kind of the rest of my day to be non-productive. So I hope all of you have a great rest of your week. I will do the Monday live stream. I'll try to get back on schedule with that. And so I hope all of you are having a good December so far. And I will talk to you guys in the next one. Take care.